My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Yeah.
Always record.
So one of the things I'm learning now is like other podcasts that I really like, when they start off, it's not like, a clean beginning. It's like they're in the middle of a conversation. Sounds like you interrupted them, and it's like I like that feeling.
Yeah,
yeah. So anyways, guys, you guys just interrupted a conversation with me and a special guest today. Welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator.
He's just explaining something to me. We're in the middle of him explaining something. He just caught us
we're trying something new, guys.
Here. Yeah.
Bear with us. We're trying something new. If you hate it, tell me. If you don't, we keep doing it. Today I have a really interesting guest. I didn't really hear about his music until did the article on tamilculture.com, and then for me, I love listening to new music, but I'm excited to be interviewing Bhiman. Did I get that correct?
No, it's okay.
Say it again.
Let's say it. Bhiman.
Bhiman, my goodness, it's a running joke. Bhiman.
It's okay.
He is if you haven't heard his music, you gotta go download it, get it on your Spotify. He is a St. Louis native. He's a musician. I've read things about him. He's been called one of America's best kept secrets, and I definitely agree. I told him just before we kind of started recording ad hoc that I showed his music to my wife, who's got very high standards for like what she considers good music, and she was blown away by his music. So for those of you that know Claudia and her music, that kind of says something. So you guys should check it out. B, welcome to the show. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we were talking about how I had a soul influence or something like that, and I was saying I like Ray Charles, and I grew up listening to Ray Charles and Sam Cooke and Nina Simone and Frank Sinatra. So part of me lives in that old style crooner world where I love to sing songs like that.
Yeah,
but it can be hard to not be cheesy with those.
No, it's
torch songs, but
your voice is like very powerful and soulful. Like it's like definitely like not of this era, which I think is a good thing. Like I feel like there's a lot of music that kind of sounds the same. So
thanks.
But yeah, like for me, I know we kind of chatted about some of these things in the Tamil Culture interview, but I think there's a lot of people that are podcast listeners versus like reading articles. So I like to start at the beginning. So why don't you tell us kind of how you grew up, growing up in St. Louis, where I imagine you're probably one of the few Tamil people, maybe you've had Tamil families, like how that kind of influenced your upbringing and kind of who you became. So yeah, let's hear that.
Yeah. I definitely had to live in a little bit of two different worlds, and I think anybody who's comes from an immigrant family or South Asians, like a lot of listeners coming to the West, whether it's England or North America, Australia, wherever, you kind of have to live in two different worlds, one foot here, one foot there. And one foot was definitely in the South Asian world just through my family, but also there was a number of South Asian kids that we kind of gravitated towards. They weren't like necessarily my neighbors, but I was definitely friends with 4 or 5 South Asian kids growing up. So it wasn't I was the only one, but definitely the majority of it was, black or white in St. Louis. And I kind of would shove my culture way down and try to just fit in, and there's a value to that for sure. But we also lived really close to a Hindu temple in St. Louis. We were I could walk to it, and that arrived maybe when I was about 10 or 12 years old. So it ended up being like a congregation spot for a lot of South Asian Hindus, at least. And so we would go there, and but the temple wasn't really my thing necessarily. I was really into music, obviously, and kind of this rebellious sort of music, rock music, and I also loved comedy growing up. Richard Pryor and George Carlin, they're very almost underground type of comics, even though they're massive successes. They definitely had a liberal slant to them. I don't know, a troublemaker sort of thing. And so I definitely gravitated towards that. And yeah, so I grew up with these kind of one foot here and one foot in another world. Um, and I in St. Louis, there's a lot of guitar music on the radio. At least back then, there's like rock music, blues music, and even the oldies music, which I really like 50s, 60s, like doo-wop stuff and Motown stuff and Phil Spector stuff. Um, and I just fell in love with that. I don't know, something about that brought out some wonder in me. And I think anybody who's like in music business when they were a kid had that feeling, you know, they had that wonder when some song would come on, it would be like bigger than life. And that was the draw. And I picked up my brother's guitar. He had like a little classical guitar. I wonder if I have it in this room. I still have it. And I play it a bunch. I actually record with it sometimes. And it's this 3/4 size nylon string guitar. So it's like a classical guitar, but it's built for 12-year-old kids. You know, it's like 3/4 of a size. And I still play it because it's super comfortable. But my brother was taking lessons, but he didn't really like it. And so I just started messing with it and asked my parents for some lessons. And I did take some classical lessons, which wasn't my thing really, but I did take a few. And then I started going to a different place and getting like kind of whatever kind of guitar lesson I wanted, which was like rock and roll stuff, whether it's Nirvana and Soundgarden or, you know, classic rock or blues or, you know, whatever it might be. And I really just took to it. So guitar was really my first love, and I started playing when I was about 7 years old. So it's been a long journey with the guitar for me.
I had a question. Like I asked this because like my best friend, he's an actor, and like I think from the time he was really young, he's always wanted to be an actor. Or like, you know, you read about athletes where like when they're 6 years old, teacher asks them what they want to be when they grow up. They're like, I want to be an NBA player. Um,
Hmm.
for you, like, was it always like since you picked up that guitar and you like, you know, played around with like the music, you had all these different musical influences you talked about. Did you have like this really like defining inflection point when you were young when it's like, hey, I'm gonna be a musician when I grow up? Or was it, you know, like my friend, even though he's an actor now, but he went through that stage where he kind of had to please his parents a bit. He did engineering for like a year or two with me.
Yeah.
Then he secretly dropped out to kind of, you know, get into acting. What was that like for you? Like, you know, were your parents supportive? Were you open about kind of your, you know, your ambitions or aspirations?
Um, as a youngster, I definitely thought it was impossible. I didn't like, I don't know, it just didn't seem reachable, especially growing up in St. Louis. Um, and there's no music industry there or whatever. But I definitely loved guitar. You know, it was like a dream, but it wasn't like an expectation or I'm definitely, oh, like I'm definitely going to be in the NBA when I grow up. Like, no, it wasn't like I'm definitely going to do that. It was like, oh, that'd be really cool. And, you know, I don't know. But I definitely practiced almost as though like my life depended on it. Um, and my parents were very supportive. They definitely paid for lessons, and you know, if I was doing everything else right, they, you know, I remember there were two times in my childhood where they helped buy a guitar for me. Um, I bought one, and then like I outgrew that, and then I got another one, and I still have that one to this day. And you know, they're supportive. I don't think they wanted or expected that I would, you know, do what I would be doing now. I mean, quite honestly, uh, coming from Sri Lanka, Ceylon, as they call it, in the North country, this is just like a complete, uh, complete new idea to be a singer songwriter. Like, what the hell is that? Like, coming from where they're from, like, no, that's not a real thing. Absolutely not. And so I don't fault them. I don't. They were like you've heard all the stereotypical stories of of really tough parents. My parents weren't that. There's an aspect of them for sure. It was like that because they grew up where education was literally the that trumps everything. If you get an education, you can reach the highest heights, um, which they actually, you know, did. They fulfilled the American dream, so to speak, and but it wasn't that difficult thing where I was disowned by my parents or anything like that. But my mom still kind of doesn't totally understand what it's all about.
Do
And she
they
comes from a medical field, so
are they ever like, hey, like I feel like when parents don't understand, like my dad, like I run a business, but like my dad, I feel like still
mhm,
doesn't know exactly what I do completely.
mhm.
So like, do your parents ever say, especially since your mom's like in a medical background, like, oh, like, are you doing okay? As in, like, they're not asking the question, but it's really, are you doing okay
Does
financially? Like,
she ever do that? Yes, she does all the time. All the time. Almost every time we speak, probably. There's like a reflex in her. Um, and I there's a thing like I'll say there's some people in the music industry who aren't that great. I'll just say, they're like their ambition outperforms their actual talent or whatever. And I'm not like that. I'm coming from a little bit from their school of trying to be the top student in their class. Like I don't know if you have that from your parents, but they came from an island, Sri Lanka, where they would know where they ranked on the island. So they would
yeah.
go, "Oh, my batchmate was number one on the island. I couldn't believe he was like got to that level, like number one on the island." I remember that. And so there's this expectation of excellence, sort of, at least from my parents and family, even extended family. There's an expectation of the children to be excellent, uh, generally in schoolwork and education until you get a good career. But I kind of brought that to music where I do want to be excellent. I want to be like the best. And if I didn't think I was one of the best, I don't think I would continue this because as anybody would know in the entertainment world, it's up and down. It's a roller coaster sometimes. You don't know what's going to happen next. And it's not like a 9 to 5.
So like an athlete trains to kind of be really good at their craft. What is your regimen or like your schedule like to kind of to continue to be a student and kind of improve at your craft and stay at the top of your game? Like, what do you do? This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
I don't have like a set formula, but I do know I can give some anecdotes. Like there are certain styles of music that I'm not like strongly familiar with. Generally, some younger artists or something like that, and then exploring those genres as a musician with a musician's ear definitely keeps me sharp. Also, taking some breaks away from playing guitar and singing so that I can be actually more inspired and rejuvenated essentially when I do need to pick it up because for 20 years I would just go hard and I need to fill every extra minute with practice but there's also like you can wear yourself down that way. And I guess I'm just trying to pace myself a little bit too. Although there's not a ton of time to just rest, but I
Yeah, no,
think
I
there's
love
a
that.
I think there's a good balance, like to have some other interests and stuff too.
Yeah, I think earlier on in my entrepreneurial career, I thought there was like one formula for success, which is kind of going hard, but it's like life is a marathon. And kind of once you realize that, and
Right.
like you said, music might be kind of where you make your living and you love it, but it is healthy to have other things that you're like passionate about or like things that recharge you.
Yeah,
And
it
I've got
can
better
work.
at that. Yeah.
It can do that. It can really give you better perspective when you do have to work, and maybe your results come quicker, or I don't know. You just because you could sit there for 6 hours on something and just bang your head, and then you've lost perspective when you could have just taken 3 hours, stopped, come back after an hour, whatever it might be, and gotten the thing done quicker. Um, so that's not a tried and true formula every single time, but it's definitely something to try for anybody out there who's hitting those kinds of, mental blocks, roadblocks, whatever.
Yeah, I know. I've noticed that like even a new practice of mine is like sometimes I get an email that like annoys me, or like it's just like like I can see it's gonna be stressful. And before I had this habit of I need to like reply to things very quickly, but now I've kind of stayed organized in a way where like certain things I'll sit on it for like 12 hours or like a day,
Mm.
still respond in a reasonable amount of time. But if I responded when I first got the email, the outcome would have been different than when I had a chance to kind of sit back and, like you said, get some perspective on, you know what, this is not a big deal. This is going to probably happen
Right.
occasionally.
Yeah.
And like, I think I became a dad like, I guess
Uh-huh.
about 18 months ago to twins.
Oh
And
wow.
I
Oh
feel
wow.
like, I always had perspective, but I feel like being with them and like just seeing like how carefree that they, like their biggest problems are like when they're not getting all the food they want, or like we're not playing enough. And like that's kind of like, it's a nice perspective to kind of see that we're, we were once like that and now we're
Yeah.
fully, doing all this other stuff. So it's a nice reminder for me, at least, kind of just to kind of keep that childlike, play and energy. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's my daughter's 8. I don't exactly remember what it was like at that time, 18 months, but you definitely see, like, children are the most humans in a way. Like
yeah,
everything is pure. Uh, it's just based on instinct and needs, and it's not, the world hasn't descended upon them, and they're not overthinking things.
they're
And
not jaded
yeah,
yet.
not jaded.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
yeah.
And it's probably one of the best things I've ever done is have a kid. It's definitely hard work and it's 24/7, but you could argue that's what life's all about, is to raise a kid.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's one of like life's greatest joys. I think, I mean, obviously it's, I think
Hmm.
people always talk about the positives. I mean, there's a lot of challenges and things associated
Hmm.
with it, but I feel like the best things in life, you kind of have to go through that learning curve and quote unquote suffer a little bit, but there is a reward to kind of your suffering.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, one of the things when I was kind of reading through your story, or like just reading about you, your last album, Peace of Mind, I always like, for me, like as a business guy, I feel like business is kind of like a hobby of mine, even though I like learning and geeking out on things.
Hmm.
And I loved how your last album was kind of released as almost like podcasts, or like weekly
Yeah.
episodes of new songs. And I think you mentioned your manager, who's also your wife, kind of that was
Hmm.
her idea. And I mean, I guess I don't know if you could answer, but I just like, it's a very unique way of marketing. And like, I guess number one,
Yeah.
like, what was the reception to that? Because it's almost like with Netflix, where instead of you binge watch, like 10 episodes like in a night, and some of these newer shows, or like, Yellowstone and others, they started doing week by week, where there's there is definitely a
Yeah.
difference. Like,
It's different. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Dan. I was gonna just say, like, what was the reception from your fans of having to wait for those new songs instead of getting everything at the same time?
Um, I guess I can't actually answer what the fans' response was, but I do know that the pacing of that is has a benefit. And it's can definitely build up anticipation, because I feel like nowadays, in the past year or so, TV shows have been going to that sort of weekly thing, which used to be the case in all TV shows, you know, 15, 20 years ago. Um, and there's an anticipation that builds up, and I don't like, just logistically, I could not have released every episode together because we were working on it as it was rolling out. So we kept um, producing them, recording them after the first one had been released, second one had been released. Um, so it was kind of like this fluid live thing for us on the back end. Um, but yeah, it was my wife's idea, and she's like loves podcasts. I like podcasts a lot. But she's kind of obsessed. Some people are very obsessed with podcasts, as you probably know, and but she was kind of specifically obsessed with kind of these true crime podcasts that kind of develop as you go. And I liked there's a podcast called Song Exploder that is really cool, and we kind of combined those two things. And the reason why the podcast idea made sense to us was that I have like kind of a socio-political current running through my music, lyrics, and I think I'm one of the best doing that today. I'm not trying to, toot my own horn too much, but that was the reason why we felt like the podcast space might fit well in this day and age, especially with the rise of Trump and everything, all that. I'm gonna call it all that happened. I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. In 2016 through 20, but there's, it's not just Donald Trump. There's a lot of other things going on, and so the album was kind of my socio-political response to everything that was going on, and we decided to create an episode for each song. And so one song and episode was about mental health, another one was about voter suppression in America, another one was about immigration, where we talked to the lead ACLU lawyer for immigration reform, and so on. And we talked to scientists and educators and journalists and experts in their field, and combined that with me talking about how I created the song and wrote the lyrics. And it was unique. It was the first time anybody had ever released an album as a podcast like that. And, it was awesome. It was a great success for us. And, it was kind of a special thing where the subject matter of my album lined up with how we wanted to present the podcast. And so it wasn't something I could just repeat going forward. So this album that I'm releasing in a month from now, in June, it is June now, and we're releasing this album in June, and it's called I'll Sleep When I'm Famous.
As you were speaking, the other thing I was thinking was, as another benefit of releasing it like your last album the way you did is, forget where I heard it, but it's like content is like consumed differently now, especially in the streaming era, than it was before, where like you thought of all these great shows I used to consume, and like, you watch the show like on Monday, Tuesday, everyone at school would be like, hey, did you see, like, this was crazy? Or like you call your friend up right after the show, it's like, can you believe what just happened? Or like you go on the internet, and it was like everyone watched the same thing at the same time, and like you had all this discussion, anticipation around the next event. Versus now, it's like I might watch the same show as like a friend, and like before we get into anything, it's like, oh, did you watch the whole thing yet? Okay, you know what? Let's just wait till you watch the whole thing. So it's like content is consumed, very differently. There's some exceptions. So sports is one. Everyone watches the same sports event. It's live.
Yeah.
Anything else that's like live, like a election or like sports or like just political news, like everything that happens and people can kind of comment it at the same time. So really interesting that you drop it that way. But I think it's like I think that's how content should be dropped. You don't want to have an all you can eat buffet. It's sometimes it's enjoyable, but a lot of times it's like not good for you. So so yeah, that's just my feedback on that. I want to jump into your new album, but before that, I also obviously saw the video that you did with Keegan-Michael Key from Keel and Peele, which is absolutely hilarious, but also got to showcase your amazing voice. That's kind of where I heard your first song. I guess number one, like, how did this opportunity come to be? And like, I guess, how did you guys decide to do a parody of Whiplash? What was the rationale for that? Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
That I had done a radio show, an NPR radio show in Minneapolis. It's like a live broadcast in a theater, and they record it for the radio, and it's kind of a variety program where they have an actor or some kind of entertainer and a musician. And I was a musician, and Keegan was the actor for the show. So it's kind of like Saturday Night Live, like that. And we just hung out after the show, kind of had some drinks and got to know each other. And then I just hit him up over the next few months, maybe 2 months later, and asked him if he wanted to be in a video. And he was down. And in terms of what it was going to be about, I was like, okay, I'm going to get Keegan to be in the video. And that's awesome. Now, what the hell is it about? And I didn't know what to do. And so I brainstormed a couple ideas. But I guess the Academy Awards was like around that time. And that year, there's a movie called Whiplash that got a lot of like attention. And I watched it with my wife, Katie. And I was like, this would be a good one. Like, I decided this would be a cool parody where he could just yell at me and belittle me, and I'm the music student. And for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, it's about a drum major in a music school with a really tough, sadistic, basically music teacher who, you know, grinds him into pulp, um, and mentally scars him, physically scars him, all this stuff. So I thought it would be a good parody with
But
Keegan.
another important part of that movie, well, I mean,
Uh-huh.
maybe you agree or don't agree. I think it's like you see the price of greatness. And maybe it's not necessarily the case for everything, but it's like
Yeah.
achieving greatness, there's a certain level of insanity or like whatever you want to call it that
Yeah.
is required to kind of get to that level. And maybe
Yeah.
not everyone has to go through that, but it was just something like that I reflected on as, like as an entrepreneur, like, do I want to do 100 hours a week, or do I just kind of,
Yeah.
just continue to do it at 30, 40 hours a week and just have a marathon versus
And
different.
definitely.
Yeah. So,
And the teacher, there's certainly the teacher definitely believed that you
yeah.
need to suffer to be great.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
Whether that's true, I don't know. But
I
there's
think you need
definitely a
to,
lot of examples of that.
I
You
think
need
you
to
need to have a little
sacrifice
bit
a
of
hell of a lot.
suffering. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Um, and yeah, so and then he's like super. He was a super pro at it, as you can imagine, and just ripped through it and was just like riffing, tons of tons of outtakes that were hilarious. Um,
He's
he
so
said,
good.
yeah, um, and yeah, it was crazy. There's a few moments in my life where I was just like in the eye of a hurricane, and that was kind of one of them where it was like hard to keep up with them. Um, and so I kind of was just the deer in headlights half the time, uh, because acting is not my thing exactly, or not exactly, not at all.
I was going to say living in LA, because that's one of the things I want to ask you. Obviously, this is one encounter you had with a celebrity. Now that you live in
Mhm.
LA and kind of in your world, and as you're kind of a rising star, getting noticed more and more, are you finding that you're interacting with more and more quote unquote celebrities or people that, people would know on a wide scale? Or
Um, honestly, I don't live in like the Hollywood cool area of LA.
okay.
I live in the more regular, down to earth, blue collar part of LA. It's actually a great place to raise a family. But I've I've run into some celebrities, but I'm not great friends with any celebrities, especially in LA. And you know what? The pandemic hit like pretty soon after we moved here. Um, so no, I don't have some cool gossip on the celebrities. I,
What
I
what made you
regret to
decide to
inform you.
move to LA?
There's a big music industry engine here, and we were in the Bay Area, and there really isn't one there. I mean, there is certain pockets, and some cool stuff there, but just being down here, um, being able to work with other people and even in stuff on the back end, in the industry part of it, yeah. And then we just kind of fell in love with where we live in LA. We live like kind of south of Pasadena. Um, so it's LA, but it's a different LA than maybe everybody thinks.
And you talked about, your
It's the
new album.
Scarborough. It's the
It's the Scarborough.
Scarborough
So it's
of
got
LA. No,
character. It's not
it's
like
like the Queens of New York is where kind of we live. If
yeah,
that makes any sense to anybody. It's not Manhattan. It's not Brooklyn. It's Queens. It's very
yeah.
diverse. Very
Well,
cool.
you mentioned your new album, I'll Sleep When I'm Famous. It's coming out fairly soon.
Hmm.
Um, you wrote a song there called Helpless, and like obviously there's
Hmm.
probably more coming out. But like what was, your reason for, you know, writing this album? what are you hoping that people get out of listening to it, and what did it do for you as well? And like, why did you title it "I'll Sleep When I'm Famous"?
Um, I can start with that first. I mean, there's that. It's kind of a commentary on the state, the times a little bit, and there's this old saying, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." So like, I don't need to sleep. I'm gonna work. I gotta hustle, and I got work to do, and I'll have time to sleep when I'm dead. And but now everybody just wants to be TikTok famous, and get their 15 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it is. And so I I just changed it to "I'll sleep when I'm famous," and probably partly for feeling underappreciated in my time. I feel like I'll be appreciated posthumously. So it's kind of a little joke there for myself. Um, and but the album itself does deal with death, or rather, how the living can like deal with death and live after the death of a loved one. So it's not exactly about or your own mortality, but it's more about living through the loss of a loved one. Something that a lot of people have done in the past few years with COVID, and my my family has suffered a number of losses, but not due to COVID actually, but other reasons. One being my nephew died by suicide when he had just graduated high school. So that was like a huge, blow to our family. It's just tragic when you see young people, gone too soon. It's like a double tragedy, where they didn't get a chance to live life. And he was actually a really exceptional young man. He was about to go to Harvard, and he was a great orator. He was like kind of Malcolm X reborn, very political, very outspoken. So it was very tough for everybody in the family. And at his funeral, I met his classmates, all his friends, who were 17, 18, and they're just wrecked by this thing. And I kind of wrote a lot of songs on this album for them. So a lot of them are like kind of written to my nephew, as though he were still here to hear them, and some of them are just for myself or for anyone going through a loss. Now it's not just shoegazing, navel gazing sadness on the album. That's a tiny bit of it, but a lot of it is more hopeful. It's kind of trying to preach a more hopeful message to the younger crowd, and also to myself and to anyone who needs a little bit of lifting up. And yeah, "Helpless" is a great example of that. The line is, "We might be helpless, but we got an open heart." And definitely one of my favorite songs I've probably ever written, and definitely feels right for this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your nephew. I feel like, I mean, it's becoming more, there's more awareness being driven to it, but especially as men, and like men of color, especially in the South Asian community,
Mhm.
we're not really encouraged, at least it depends on your upbringing, to kind of talk about things. It's kind of, you're almost conditioned, or like the pattern you see is just suck it up, like don't like talk about it. And it's
I
just
believe the sound. I believe the sound that the adults make is
yeah,
it's just like, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah,
just we don't talk about that. Like,
yeah. And I feel like raising, I'm seeing, I'm seeing more awareness in people trying this, which is trying to raise their male children, especially, to be emotionally intelligent, and be comfortable sharing things, versus the
Mhm,
stereotypical way that we're taught to kind of behave.
mhm.
So yeah, no, I'm sorry to hear that.
I,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think our parents. I don't know if your parents are from, or if you're second, third generation, or first in Canada, but I feel like at least with my parents, they grew up with a set of survival tactics and instincts that work in Sri Lanka. Not that they don't work here, but in the West, there's like there's a whole different set of rules.
Yeah.
And so those survival instincts don't necessarily always play well in this world. The toughness stuff, definitely, but there's the bottling up stuff, especially in this rapidly changing world where mental health and everything else is coming to the forefront. And I think the reason why we are talking about mental health so much is like because of technology a little bit. Like everything is in our face all the time. Like Twitter is like a bad neighborhood I wouldn't go to if it was a real place. Like you'd be like, okay, let's like roll up our windows and lock our doors. But no, Twitter is like in our homes, in our laps all the time, you know, and things like that. And I think we're, you know, still a little bit all naive about it, as though it's, you know, we'll look back at this and be like, oh, this is like cigarette smoking. Why would I let my kid, like my 15-year-old, be on like Twitter ever? Like, no. Or not wearing seatbelts or something, you know.
Well, you know that technology isn't a great thing when you have leaders of technology companies like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. They don't let their kids near the stuff. They created like you said, a cigarette. They're like, my kid's not smoking it, but I'll sell it to you.
Right. Yeah.
So no, I agree. And I think things go in cycle. I think we're in like a hyper accelerating kind of world of like software and technology eating everything and becoming so prevalent. But there is a small movement that I think will grow, which is people trying to break away from technology and like, you know, products where like people sell you with dumb phones versus smartphones. Like all you have on the phone is, you know, text and,
I fantasize about having my old flip phone. I'd be like, that'd be great, kind of. The only bad thing would be maps, like while driving or
I can't go back from
like,
Google Maps. That changed my life.
yeah, incredible.
But I guess, you know, you talked about kind of, you know, a comment you made was, you know, you feel like you'll be appreciated more when you're kind of gone. But I guess while you're here, you know, what's your goal in the next like 5 years, or like where do you see yourself, or like the kind of influence that you hope to have? Maybe not like in a selfish way, but more so like, you know, you want to leave your imprint on the world. And, you know, art is a great way that is immortal in the sense that once you are gone, literally your art will survive. And 80 years from now, 30 years from now, people will hear your music. So
that's the hope for, that's one of the hopes.
Money can be hard to come by, but here's a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
I guess just in terms of like, I just put a number out there. It feels like an interview question, but like, you know, in 5 years,
where do I see myself?
Yeah, like where do you want to be? Like, what do you hope to be doing?
I hope to be running your podcast. I hope to have taken your job and you're no longer the host. No, I'm just no, in 5 years, I mean, what I really enjoy is songwriting and producing. I like doing my own artistry, you know, as Bhiman and everything, but it's sometimes a little bit limited, whether that's for superficial reasons, as like from the audience and from record labels, where my look isn't congruous with what they want to see out there. Maybe I'm too dark skinned, maybe I'm too exotic, maybe I'm too this, maybe I'm too that. So I think I'd like to be writing and producing for other people a bit, or working with other people in kind of teamwork with, whether it's an artist or whether it's another production partner, working on other people's music, trying to just, I mean, ultimately, I want to be heard by as many people as possible. And if only so many people will listen to Bhiman, maybe more people will listen to, you know, I don't know, maybe I'll change my name to Jennifer or something or other. But maybe they'll listen to whatever it is. I mean, I don't plan on quitting my career, but I'd like to expand my career a bit more from just doing Bhiman and releasing albums, which I will no doubt continue to do. But I'd like to be working with others.
who is somebody that would be like a dream collaboration or somebody that you would like to work with?
Well, currently I'm like obsessed with this group called Justice. They're kind of older a little bit, but I mean they're pretty big, or they're very big. But they're an electronic dance band from France. They've had huge hits. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of them. But I don't know if I can collab with them, but I'm definitely inspired by them. And even on this album that I just did, I collabed with multiple people that I'd love to continue to work with, and I actually only see bigger and better things from them. A couple of young artists, and yeah, I want to continue being creatively active and not stagnating in my creativity, I guess you could say. I don't want to continue doing the same things over and over, which is, I'm part of being curious all the time too, and being
Yep.
inspired from different places.
Is that why you made the podcast comment? Is that something that you'd like to do in the future? Have like a podcast?
Uh, Oh, about your podcast?
Oh no, just a
Taking your
podcast in
job?
general. Just in general.
No, I like the podcast format. I will say writing a scripted podcast for the album release was one of the hardest, and performing it and editing it and mixing it, everything was one of the hardest jobs in music I've ever done in my entire life. Because it was like I did record the album and I did all the things I normally do for the album, and then on top of that, I created a podcast with my wife, and it was hard. Especially, it was like I was a newbie, and so everything was just, it was like being thrown into an NBA basketball game. You're like, oh my god, where do I start? I'll run up and down the court, sure. I don't know what to do though. But yeah, no, we actually learned a lot from some much more experienced podcasters, so that was super helpful. But I do like this conversational format, like what we're doing here, where it's loose and there's room for jokes and for taking a sip of coffee. Yeah.
Well, the reason I did it was I regularly talk to or try to connect with interesting people like yourself. Problem is I'm a horrible storyteller, but I feel like I'm good at asking questions and kind of directing conversation, but really bad at recapping it. My wife tells me I'm a horrible storyteller. Like when she asked me like how my day was, like I can't like even think of that. So this is like kind of my way of, okay, cool. I had some interesting nuggets of learning and information, but I can't recall. Let me record it, and like this way I can release my conversations at scale without having to tell every person that asks, oh, you talked to this person, like what did they say? I'm like, listen to the podcast, there's some great stuff in there. So that was kind of like my reasoning for doing this.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I get that. Tell your wife to take it easy on you. Stop criticizing you so much. No, I'm just kidding.
she is the guy from Whiplash, just in my regular life, like just constantly improving me.
Do it again. Do the whole thing again. I don't care if they don't want to do it. Get them back on the phone. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of related to the the 5-year question, but like even like it's a question I like to think about constantly, especially now that I have kids. And what's the personal legacy that you're hoping to leave in terms of how you want to be remembered by your friends and family?
It's a tough one. I don't know. I guess I don't think about that too much, but I guess what I'll say is how I will probably be remembered is by somebody listening to my music, like listening to a recording. So I hope that my voice or my song touches them in a way that the greatest songs can do. That's, I guess, my ultimate hope. That's not a personal family thing. I don't expect that of my wife and daughter, but for the public, yeah, that's what I would say. I'd say hopefully I've created enough great songs that I'll be remembered for that. Hope to be remembered as a great dad as well. And that's something I really do care about. I definitely have curbed my touring, which I used to do extensively since the child came along, and I have no regrets about that. because I was gone quite a bit. And there's really nothing more important than your child. So no regrets about that.
And with the knowledge and experience, life experience that you have, if you had a chance to go back in a time machine and sit down with 16-year-old B, what would you tell him?
I'd say you get to go on tour with Chris Cornell in the future, which was my absolute one of my top heroes from Soundgarden. And you're probably too hard on yourself, and you think about things that no one in a million years would ever think about. Only you are thinking about, and you're too much in your own head, and try to get some perspective. You dumb idiot. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I would say the perspective, I definitely had skewed perspective growing up. I think a lot of people do. Every moment is the entire world, and no, it's not. It's a part of it. But when you're 16 years old, 4 years of your life is a quarter of your life. When you're my age, 40, or I'm 39, that's a tenth of your age. And as you get older, it just becomes these smaller moments in life, essentially. But that's why young people are have a tough time with negative setbacks. They take them really hard, and it becomes a huge deal in their mind. And it can lead to really awful, disastrous things. And I'll say again that the album was directed towards a younger crowd, kind of written towards my nephew. It's not actually my nephew, it's my cousin's child. I just call him my nephew because that's kind of like the age relation. But yeah, he's from St. Louis, was from St. Louis too. So it's definitely a hard time, but I kind of hoped to create something positive out of that, for his friends, for him, for anyone who might need it. And I think a lot of people actually might need it, not to mention adults going through a grieving process of any kind, whether that's younger people or elderly people passing away. It's an inevitability. So learning to deal with death and deal with death proportionately to life, and taking everything in stride. That's kind of the basis of the album a little bit.
Well, that's a kind of a good way to segue into the last part of the podcast. It's a fun little game I like to call Creator Confessions. It's a rapid fire speed round. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You're going to say the first thing that kind of pops in mind. You ready?
All right. I don't think I've heard this on the radio a bunch, but I don't think I've ever done it in my life.
Awesome. Ready. So, favorite Tamil food?
Idiyappam.
Something that scares you?
Brown widow spiders.
Yeah, those are scary. Insecurity you have?
That I'm not good enough.
Favorite show you're watching?
Barry on HBO.
A place you're itching to travel to?
Brazil.
A fellow Tamil creator out there you want to give a shout out to?
D-Lo, comedian and actor.
Favorite childhood memory?
Going to Six Flags with my brother.
Something that you like to do for fun outside of work?
Play basketball.
Favorite movie of all time?
Major League.
Oh, interesting choice. Something you've purchased in the last couple of years that you've splurged on, but you have zero regret about it?
This Universal Audio, this preamp, it's called the UAD Apollo X6. For all those audio nerds out there.
Pet peeve?
Phonies. People are phony.
A person or celebrity you look up to?
Stephen Curry.
If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, I regret that you would have?
Didn't get to see my child grow up.
Age you want to retire by? When I say retire,
yesterday.
My definition is do what you want when you want. That's my.
I would. In this line of work, you kind of it's not it's different. It's like a compulsion. It's not like a paper pusher.
Yeah.
So anybody who's like does some kind of stagecraft of any kind where you're entertaining others, it's like it's some deep-seated like I need approval shit that is a compulsion. And you kind of are there, you want to do it for the rest of your life. So I don't think retirement is quite the same idea in my mind.
Somebody whose life you'd want to experience for one day.
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't know. Dang. Who's yours? Rapid fire.
You know, the number one answer. Can you guess who the number one answer? Like, I think 80%.
Drake.
No, Elon Musk. That's like the number one answer, I guess.
Ugh, barf.
Yeah.
Sorry for everybody who likes Elon Musk.
There's a lot of people that I would want to experience. I think, like, I would want to see what a star basketball player like a LeBron or Curry, like what their day is like, especially since they do so much outside of that.
Yeah.
You know, Barack Obama, you know, now that he's out of like, the office, like what is he up to? Like, who does he get to kind of hang out with? Hangs out, I'm sure he hangs out with cool people.
Yeah, Barack would be a good one.
Yeah.
He could be chilling, but he just does whatever he wants. Willie Nelson might be mine.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. What's a book you've read or a podcast you've listened to recently that's had an impact on you?
The Sympathizer.
What is that about?
It's about from the 1960s, a Vietnamese spy comes to America and is spying for the Communist Party here in America. And I can't pronounce Viet Tran Nguyen. I don't know. I don't know how to say his name right. My bad. But amazing book.
A belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life.
Meditation.
And finally, a piece of advice that you'd give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there.
Don't let the distractions distract you, and anything you think is impossible is probably possible. You just have to work hard for it.
Anything is
possible. How's that for my
possible.
Tony Robbins?
I was thinking the Kevin Garnett
speech.
I was thinking the Kevin Garnett. Remember, anything is possible. Do you remember that or not?
No, I don't. What is that from?
Oh, after he won the championship.
After he won,
yeah.
Just on the court, he yelled that. Oh.
Yeah. Well, B, that was amazing. I mean, I think there's some great, like I said, nuggets. If you ask me to summarize, I'm not going to be able to, but that's why I'm recording it.
Tell me a story and then summarize that story for me.
You know, for anybody that's kind of listening that, maybe they're like a musician or like just a creator of some sort and they're inspired by your story, what is the best way to reach out to you? You know, they want to reach out and just connect or pick your brain.
Yeah. I mean, I have my search engine optimization is very optimized with Bhiman. It's spelled BHIBHIMAN. And you could Google that and you will find a website that says BHIBHIMAN.com. All my socials are at Bhiman, BHIBHIMAN. So everything is Bhiman. So whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, MySpace, Napster, going back in time to things that don't exist anymore. Everything is Bhiman or at Bhiman. So yeah, you can check me out all those places.
Awesome. Well, it was great chatting with you. I can't believe it took me till the end of the podcast to realize that you're a basketball fan. I guess because you were I figured you might have been a baseball fan.
I'm a big St. Louis Cardinals fan, but I became a Warriors fan when I was living in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
In like 2000, way before Steph Curry got drafted. So I'm not a bandwagon guy.
So the Baron Davis days, like back with the
Baron
Monte
Davis,
Ellis,
Monte Ellis, Jason Richardson.
The I Believe Warriors. I think.
Yeah, we believe. Yeah.
Oh, we believe. Yeah.
And actually, it was painful in 19 when your Raptors beat the Warriors. And my daughter, we had just like gone to Toronto. My daughter like fell in love with Toronto. And it was like, I don't want the Warriors to win. I want the Raptors to win. It was like, all in my face about it.
I was at game one in Toronto. It was amazing. First
cool.
NBA game in Toronto. They had like special Drake shirts that I think they sell for like $1,000 now. Me and my wife each have one. Like, they gave it away. They gave it away as
kind of. It was like a giveaway.
But it's like like the only thing that he ever did. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, no, it's a great conversation. You know, thank you for kind of making time and connecting, and looking forward to kind of
Sure.
sharing your story. And
Yeah.
for those of you listening, appreciate you guys as always. Have any feedback about the format of this podcast with the unusual beginnings, let me know. But otherwise, more of that. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.